Okay, so what I'm going to be talking about today is really how you do three things: how you grow your audience, your engagement, and the impact of your events all through AI. But before I even get into that, let's first look at why do an event in the first place? Because let's face it, it can be a lot of time, money, and effort. And so at the end of the day, what I've discovered is the reason you want to do events is really because it's one of the best ways to grow your influence. And that really is the key. Your influence is the key for growing your audience, your impact, and ultimately your income. And so I had this question for a while, like, how do I actually grow my influence? And so I've tried everything. I've done content marketing and marketing campaigns with lead magnets. I've done Facebook campaigns. I've done presentations. I've spoken at events and even wrote a book. And I can tell you that having an event, your own event, is probably the greatest way that you can grow your influence, which leads to growing your audience, your income, and your impact. And so why would you want to do an event? Well, it's a great way to increase your visibility. It's a great way to establish your credibility. It drives traffic to your website. It grows your email list and generates leads. It builds relationships with new audiences and makes more sales of your products and services. And so events are really powerful. And the beautiful thing is it doesn't have to cost a lot of effort or money. And so if that's the case, then why don't people organize events? Like, why isn't everyone doing this? And there's a few reasons. People don't have time. That's a big one. No idea where to even start. People don't want to look silly. So how do you reach out to speakers? How do you get attendees? Maybe they can't find the right tools or systems. And so these are all kind of some of the common challenges that people have. But I would say the biggest reason that I found is that it just takes a ton of time. Like, who's got the time for all this? But the good news is, and really the crux of this conversation, is the world has changed. We now live in the new world of AI, which makes all of these problems pretty much go away. And so there's been a big shift with leveraging AI for everything. But of course, I'm going to focus this today on how AI is really powerful for events. And so AI is changing the game because now events are being run by leveraging AI. The marketing for the event is being used and created through AI. The content itself is built through AI. The data you're using to analyze who you should have at the event, how was the event received, all of that is being done through AI. And then what's coming out of this is really those, what I said before, growing your audience, your income, and your impact and your influence. And how that's happening is you're getting more engagement now because of AI. You're growing your visibility because of AI. And it leads to more trust and ultimately a lot of times to more income opportunities. And so I believe it's really the biggest event and biggest opportunity in events right now, bar none. And it's really the biggest opportunity I think of in our lifetime beyond events and marketing. It's just a game changer for every single facet of our life. And so a lot of money can be made if you know how to tap into this. A lot of engagement be created, a lot of growth, a lot of opportunities. There's just a lot that's available now because of this dramatic change in our life. And so this is all true, which obviously I think it is. I think most of us would agree. The question then becomes, how can you actually tap into this opportunity? And so today I'm going to share with you kind of one system specifically designed to grow your event audience, impact, and engagement through AI or artificial intelligence. And so here's what we're going to cover. We're going to look at the key technologies that are really shaping the events landscape, how you can use AI to tailor those experiences of the events on an individual one-to-one basis. We're going to discuss the role of different tools like chatbots, predictive analytics, and getting instant feedback. Discuss some of the concerns, because there are some concerns. I'm sure we'll get into this with Q&A. And then delve into some of the upcoming trends and advancements with AI, because it's changing every single day. It's really quite amazing. So why listen to me in the first place? Well, I've leveraged AI heavily throughout a few companies I have. Actually, I have a software company in AI. I have a podcast in AI. I create events using AI. I have giveaways. I've been on a bunch of stages. I talked at most of the major conferences about AI. So I've done a lot, and I can tailor this to different levels because I've done this at very high levels in the corporate world, but also with smaller businesses as well. And at the end of the day, I've helped thousands of people grow their audience, engagement, impact. I want to share the tools I've learned and personally used so that you can have the same kind of impact in your life. And so what's the secret to engaging events? Well, you have to have the right formula, because if you don't have the right formula in this or like anything in life, it just doesn't have the same level of success. And so here's the formula that I found really becomes powerful. The first thing is you have to have the right impact delivered to the right audience with the right engagement, and then the results of your event can really explode. And so this works no matter what stage you're at. Maybe it's your first event and you don't even have any attendees yet. Maybe you have had an event, maybe it wasn't that successful and you want to grow it. Or maybe you've done a lot in the past and you already have events and you have a big list and you just want to make it better. The beauty is AI can work at all three of these stages, no matter where you find yourself today. You just need to find the right steps. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. Which and what are the right steps that you need to take leveraging AI to make your event more successful. And so it's really a different approach now than has been done in the past. So the first thing is we want to get results out of this. We want to have an impact, not just for the attendees, but for you yourself, which I define that as being profitable. So this profitable doesn't necessarily have to be money. It could be whatever your goals are, but you want the event to accomplish your goals, and it has to be easy. And the good news, it's never been easier than it is today by leveraging AI. And then the other thing is it can't take a lot of time. And this is a huge one because, as I mentioned earlier, the biggest challenge people have is they just don't have the time. And so AI is really a game changer in that regard as well. And so what we want to do is really create momentum, which I call a flywheel. So what we're striving to do is create an AI event flywheel. And the flywheel consists of these three things. The first thing we want to do is grow our attendees. The second thing we have to do is make an impact on those attendees. And then we need to make sure those attendees are engaged. I'm going to share with you step-by-step how to do that by leveraging AI. So where do you start? The old one was to do all those manually. Today, we have the benefit of leveraging AI to create that flywheel effect, to create that momentum. And so we're going to look at three things: how to grow your audience with barely any effort or cost, how to 10x your impact, and the fastest way to monetize it. So let me dive right in. So the first thing we're going to look at is how do you grow your audience? And so how do you grow your audience? Well, it's really through marketing. At the end of the day, if you don't have marketing mastered, you're not going to have success, because you can have the most amazing content and the most engaging plan, but there aren't any attendees, it's just going to fall flat. And so I always like to start with the audience or the marketing that drives that audience. So the question then becomes, how do I grow my event audience and attendees through AI? And so the first thing you want to do is define your audience, because you can't hit a target you haven't defined. So you have to figure out who exactly do you want to attract. And the audience is really, not just your attendees. And the reason why I call it audience instead of attendees, because you have different constituents. You have the attendees themselves, you have the speakers certainly, and sponsors, and there's a whole bunch of people. But what I find is when you know who you're looking for, it's actually pretty easy to find those attendees for your event. And so to define your audience, you want to look at these three things. Who are they? So what is their position, their role, and their responsibility? Where they belong? So where do they aggregate? Are they in certain groups or organizations? And why do they need you? Why would they want to attend the event? So what problem or opportunity are you trying to solve for? And so how do you define that audience? Again, attendees, speakers, and sponsors. Well, here's a few AI tools that are very helpful for that. One place I start is with ChatGPT. It's very powerful because it's great for building what's called persona or an avatar. So, and it's kind of the go-to nowadays as far as a chatbot. You also want to look at your own data. So Google Analytics has more and more AI capabilities built right into it. So it's a great way to take that information. There's also more standalone tools like Twilio Segment, which will take your data and segment your different audiences, and then Salesforce CRMs. So Salesforce, these are all kind of examples. I have more details and a guide I can share afterwards, but Salesforce is a good example of a CRM that also has AI capabilities, as does most of them, like HubSpot and others all have that kind of capability where you get more data and insights, so you know exactly who you're targeting for any particular event and can personalize your communications. you can't personalize until you first define it. And so a lot of people get enamored with the tools, but forget about the actual strategy, what they're trying to accomplish. You define your goal and your persona before you start the personalization. And so that's how that works. Now, here's an example. Actually, one of my software companies has a persona builder in it. And so I think in terms of frameworks are kind of what were around before prompts. And so a kind of a basic prompt, this one's for a bio, but you can modify easily for a persona. So you might say, hey, I'm looking for ideal audience, who does what, why, through how, after when, and then ask, ChatGPT for framework. So this is kind of a very high level. If you just Google ChatGPT's persona prompts, there's a gazillion of them. And there's also some great plugins that sit right within Google Chrome, which is the browser, that integrate with OpenAI as well. OpenAI owns ChatGPT. So that's how it kind of works. You have OpenAI, which has ChatGPT and a bunch of other tools for video creation, image creation. The one that's specifically for the chatbot is called ChatGPT. They've had different versions of it. And there's Chrome extensions on top of it that can then create the persona or the prompts. And there's some great ones for persona, or you can just Google it or use a software tool like this. So there's lots of options there. I can actually, if there's time, demo some of the Chrome extensions and plugins I use at the end. Now, the next thing you have, so once you define your audience and who you want to track and the personalization, all that, the next thing you have to do is have compelling messaging. So you want to have marketing content and messaging that resonates so that people actually want to register. And so here's a couple tools. I like Claude is pretty good for copywriting. And so that's another, I'm trying to show a variety of chatbots in this as well, because that's probably the most popular tool nowadays. So Claude is basically a competitor to ChatGPT. There's also more custom copywriting tools that sit on top of a lot of these tools. So Jasper is a good example of that. They've been around for quite a bit of time, relatively speaking, and they sit on top of OpenAI. But they have a layer where they add some value, which makes the copywriting easier. Grammarly is another well-known one. And then Persado is pretty useful for doing kind of more personalization research, generates optimized content based on keywords and different powerful words that are actually used by your customers. So it's got more data intertwined. So I'm just giving you a sense of what's possible. This is what my way means extensive list. That's actually why I have my directory. So my AI tools and trends directory has basically every AI tool you could think about. And so there's more detail there. I'm trying to give you a strategic overview of how these tools could be used and the possibilities at the end of the day. Now, the next thing you want to think about is, okay, how do you attract the messaging after that messaging is in place? How do you actually market to them? And so these are your marketing strategies. And so how do you create effective marketing campaigns for your event? And so just some ideas here. Again, Tracker's an interesting tool that uses AI analysis of data to find influencers. So for instance, if you have a speaker you want to get, or maybe people that will promote your event, a tool like Tracker could be helpful for doing analysis of people's wheelhouse of what they talk about. Framer is a great tool, is an AI tool. I can't say it's a great tool. I haven't personally used this one yet, but it's a tool, AI tool for creating websites and landing pages, because you obviously have to have the attendees go somewhere. A landing page is a great way to kind of pre-sell the idea. HubSpot has a lot of campaign capabilities to personalize the messaging based on the data. So that's one that would be, can't remit because they're a big player in this space now. And that's what you'll find. A lot of the big players are kind of have the resources. So they're already much more further ahead than the smaller players. And the Workato is an interesting tool for forms and registrations, because that's a very important part as well. There's also a lot of chatbot capabilities there. There's a lot of chat tools like Drift that are working and leveraging AI to help answer questions in the registration process. And so that is kind of how you grow your audience by using AI. I'm going to take a second here and stop and see if there's any questions. So if there's any questions, feel free to pop them in, and I will take a quick look on the at the screen. Let's see here. Any questions? Not yet, but thanks for the feedback, Alex and Zach. Perfect. All right, so I will dig back in if that's okay with everybody. Let me share my screen again. Some really, truly amazing events. And the one thing I can share that they all have in common is they've made an impact in my life. And the impact can be made in different ways. Maybe it's something I learned, maybe it's someone I met, but no matter how you think about it, great events always have a great impact. And what you'll find is that impact is the key to attracting attendees and speakers for that matter. And so what makes an event impactful? Well, it's really determined by transformation. So what kind of transformation are the people that are there receiving? And more importantly, how do you create transformation? And so transformation really is in the mind of the beholder, so the attendee in this example. And really you want to answer the question, what are they looking for in the event? Or to say another way, what kind of transformation they're looking to gain by attending this event? And so it's really simple, actually. It breaks down to just three things. First of all, it has to be relevant. It has to be relevant to their interests, their needs, and their goals. So obviously this event I'm speaking right here at now is about two things, events and AI. So maybe, hopefully you're interested in both. Maybe you're really into events and you want to see where AI is going, or maybe you want to learn more about AI and events are secondary, or ideally you're interested in AI and events. That's the best thing. Then you probably have certain needs or goals. So maybe you want to hold an event and you want to make it as successful as possible. Or maybe you want to make it as easy as possible. Or maybe you want to reduce the cost of the event. So having an event, it starts with relevance. From there, it really comes down to knowledge. So what are you sharing? What are they going to take away from this? So the knowledge is kind of the head knowledge, like they're learning something new. Then they want insights. So how do you actually do it? And so once you know what to do, how do you do it? And so this is where even now I'm sharing with you a concept, which are the different steps. Then I'm showing how you can do it to a certain extent using the AI tools. Obviously, we could go much deeper in each one of these if we have more time. Log in, show you how it actually works. That'd be best case scenario. We only have a short period of time. This is why I have resources at my website, or this is where day-long, week-long events come into play. And so people want to know what to do. They want to know how to do it. And then both of those are fantastic, but unless action is taken, nothing really comes from it. And so people are looking for experiences. They're looking for hands-on application. And no matter what, even if you can't do those, which are ideal, you want them to have actionable takeaways so they actually apply what they learn. And so how do you actually create an impactful event? By leveraging all that I just shared and leveraging AI. Well, the first thing you want to do is have compelling content. It starts with what you're sharing, what you're teaching. Hopefully you're finding this compelling. And so how do you create compelling content through AI? Well, there's a few tools you can use. There's many tools you can use. These are just some of my favorites. I really like Descript, because if you want to incorporate video in your presentation, which I'm not doing it here just because of time constraints and technology, but Descript is a great tool for taking and transcribing content that you've had and then editing it. It's a great tool for creating compelling content. And content doesn't have to necessarily be just during the event itself. It might be event content preceding. So this might be a teaser content that gets people interested, or it might be post-event content. So this content that I'm doing here, I'm assuming it'll probably show up on a YouTube video or somewhere. Descript is a great tool for editing that. Curata is great for curating content. So getting content, even for this, I was researching different tools I might not have been aware of. So content curation is very powerful. Perplexity is another ChatGPT competitor, another chatbot. That one is really nice because it gives you citations and sources and links. So Perplexity is a really interesting tool. And then Scholarly, that's kind of a more niche tool. So I like to give a mix of kind of general tools as well as domain-specific tools. This tool is useful for doing research. I think that's where you'll see a lot more use cases for AI, is with doing research, because it can compile and curate information so well and provide sources. From what I've experienced, it's got ways to go. Either the data is not correct, or it's not cited. So there's a lot of opportunity, or it's dated, it's not modern or up to date. So there's lots of issues there, but I think as we move to the future, it will get better. And then the other part you want to have is, okay, we have great content, but just as important is how it's presented, and design is certainly a big component of that. And so you want to design presentations that make an impact. So a few tools for that. There's lots of image generators. I'm sure most of you have probably heard about this by now. Dolly's a good one. There's also, there's so many. Midjourney is another one that's pretty well received. And then once you have that image, what do you do with it? Canva can be very useful for that. Canva actually has a lot of AI tools embedded right within it. Beautiful AI is being used for creating presentations. And there's also helpers. Google has Duet. Microsoft has one as well that sits along Microsoft PowerPoint, and they will assist you as you're creating content. And you're going to see a lot more of this as well. So there's website builders like Elementor comes to mind, and WordPress, where they'll help you create content, help you create images right within your workflow. So I think you're going to see a lot more intertwining of multiple services in one interface, kind of helping you out as you go along. Certainly the big players are moving that direction, Google, Microsoft, etc. And then once you have that, how do you actually organize your event? So this one's pretty simple because it's just me and it's webinar style. But what if you have 20 speakers? What if you have 100 speakers? You have to really organize your event for the attendees to get the maximum amount of value. And so organization is going to be key. And so how do you do that? Well, a couple tools. Gatherly is a good tool for organizing the event. Cascade helps you structure it. Notion, more of a general purpose tool that has many uses, is great for kind of organizing content, data. And Trello, it's been around for a while. It's a project management tool, and that is now incorporating more AI elements into it. And so that's how you grow your impact. The last thing you want to do, I'm going to skip through for the sake of time, is look at how do you, well, I won't give you away the spoil. Let me ask the question first. What is the one thing you need for a successful event? So now at this point, you actually have attendees. Maybe you have amazing speakers, and ideally, maybe you have some sponsors. You have great content, so it looks good, it sounds good, it's presented well, and it's got a good structure to it, so it's planned out. So there's one thing remaining. What is that? Well, of course, it's engagement, because without engagement, it's going to fall flat, which is why I try to interrupt myself. Actually, I forgot to do that. Let me do that right now. Let me take a break here before I get into this one and see if there's any question, which is really the engagement we have right now. Zach, are there any success stories you can share regarding the integration of AI in events? Oh gosh, well, I'm using it. Actually, a lot of this presentation right here, I use AI to help structure the outline. This is all brand new content. It's based off of, some templates and structures I've used in the past for totally unrelated things. But a lot of this content here is brand new, and I wrote it in literally just a couple hours by leveraging AI. So I think the best case studies are not ones that you just read about, but ones you actually applied and had success with. And this is actually a good example right here. If I had more time, I was going to create all the images using AI just to make it fun. I just didn't have the opportunity. And then Olivia has a question. So hopefully answers your question, Zach. So Olivia, could you discuss any challenges or limitations associated with integrating AI into event planning and execution? There are a lot of challenges still. I mean, there's a lot of things to look at. The first thing I would think about is hallucinations. And so, when you have content, you want to make sure you're verifying it, because a lot of the data is not correct. So that's probably one of the first things I would look at. There's also, from what I've seen, not a lot of great team collaboration capabilities yet. So most of the logins go to a single source. So if you're trying to collaborate as a team, and because I know from doing events, usually there's multiple people involved, haven't seen it really kind of all, like for instance, chatbots. You can't just all kind of chat on the same thread if you have a team. So I think there's certain limitations like that are going to change. I think it's certainly as Google and more shareable type content like Google Drive, Google Docs, Google Slides, etc. I think that will become clear. I think the other challenge is, and probably one of the biggest ones, is curation of tools. So which tool are you going to use? Because if you have a team and there's hundreds of different tools, how do you narrow down which ones you're going to use? Settings like this are great because I've curated some of the tools. Resources like my directory are helpful because there's curation there. But I think that's a challenge. There's no standardization. And then along with that, there's not really any great training out there today. So how do you actually know what to do? Again, I think this is a good first step because people are learning more through this, but there's not a lot of great resources. So hopefully that's a good starting place for you, Olivia, to know some of the problems, and there's many more, but that's a great place to start. And then Alex has a question. Can you elaborate on how AI helps events organizers better understand attendees' preferences and behaviors? Okay, so that's actually where I'm going to next. So let me get into this last lesson, and then from there, I can answer more questions at the end. So let's see here. Show my entire screen. Okay, so what do the greatest events have in common? Engagement. Oops, wait a minute. I think I went backwards. Here we are. So how do you create engagement? So engagement really comes down to a few things. Networking. So people, one of the biggest drivers of events, I'm sure everyone here knows this, it's networking. Because when you're able to network and meet people, that is a huge plus. Interaction, so making sure it's engaging, like I'm trying to do here, but there's all sorts of things you can do well beyond this. It could be polls, it could be questions, etc. And then community. So what happens after this? So is there a Facebook group? Is there there's a number of private community software that's available now, or maybe it's a LinkedIn group. There's lots of community opportunities. Social media at a broader level, of course, is a community, and thinking about how that comes into play. So kind of the first thing to look at is creating networking opportunities. And so how do you create attendee networking opportunities? By leveraging AI. Here's a few tools that are really cool. Speed networking. I'm still learning all these, to be honest. So there's so much change. When I was researching this, I thought these were really cool. So speed networking, basically what these do is help you connect with people. It uses data to find people that have similar interests. It helps match people in groups like online as well as offline. So a lot of these can work online and offline. So imagine if you're going to a large networking event and you have a certain idea of types of people you want to meet, this will facilitate that matchmaking basically. There's also tools that are making this much more powerful for questions that would basically have you take a survey. You answer the survey and it'll take that data and then match with people. This can also be used with LinkedIn. So basically doing curation of people within LinkedIn with a common, goal or experience. You can then take that and aggregate that data. So basically there's the sources of the data, which could be survey-based, it could be based off of social media profiles, it could be in a CRM. So that's the first step, is getting the data, the source, and then applying AI to aggregate, segment, etc. So that's kind of where networking is going. And then beyond that is actually fostering the participation and interaction of everyone that's involved. And so how do you foster that attendee participation and interaction? Here's a few ideas. Chat, I think, is big. And so chat can be used throughout the whole process, through the registration process, after, during. The Drift is a big chatbot, incorporating more AI. Slido, I'm not even sure exactly how to say that one, but that's a tool for live polls and quizzes and different engagement. Right Sonic is helpful for creating questions. And so these are questions you can ask the attendees. You could, obviously use a tool like ChatGPT to do that as well. And so there's lots of opportunities here. There's also some really interesting tools that will come up with icebreakers. So icebreakers are another really good use case for AI because, if you breakout rooms, for instance, having an icebreaker is a great way to start those conversations. And so what I would encourage everyone to do is go through their traditional methods and say, okay, here's how we do X, Y, Z. So icebreakers have been around forever, but now how can I use AI to kind of make it more interesting to brainstorm those areas? So nothing's really changed, as they say, under the sun, but what you're doing is using a tool to make it more effective. That's why I always encourage people to think strategically first and say, okay, what am I going to accomplish? And then say, what AI tool or system or prompt or framework can I leverage to accomplish that goal faster and more effectively? as opposed to going the other way around where you look at AI tools and figure out how to shoebox them into your process. So you're better off thinking strategically first, which is why I'm trying to orientate this presentation in that direction to say, okay, what problems are we trying to solve? And then how can AI make it more effective? I don't know, I can't remember if I put in this presentation, but another thing to think about is afterward, right? So after the event, you might want to send out a survey, like a net promoter score type survey. So, would you recommend this to a friend? How do you rate this? Etc. You can use AI and different tools, whether it's ChatGPT or Excel plugins. There's a whole bunch of tools. Google Spreadsheets has them as well, to take all that data and get insights. So it's really taking data, the source of data, which again, it could be first party, third party, analytics tools, survey, etc. Get the data. Then you're applying AI to make sense of the data, so it's actually actionable and insightful. So that's a lot of where you're going to see this as well. So you have the interaction during the event, and then after the event, leveraging the data. You could even look at how long are people staying in the webinar, when are they dropping off, at what point do they drop off. Maybe that's, from an insight perspective, that maybe that tells you at that point you have to change the content, or maybe at that point you have to apply some sort of engagement. And so it's really about the data, the knowledge you get from that data, and then the application, the insight, and then the application. And then the last part is cultivating a community. So how do you cultivate a sense of community? Let's see. I have a bunch of tools, but I don't want to share that here because it's going to take too much time. But Higher Logic has some really good tools for creating community. There's also more and more AI in the large players, obviously LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. There's also Salesforce. If you're on the enterprise level, they have some community tools. And then Hootsuite, that is helpful for creating social media content. And so I didn't even touch on this much, but there's a lot of opportunities to take the content from the event. Just an example, there's a tool called Opus, I forget what it's called, Opus One or something like that. And what it'll do is it'll chop up all the video into micro content, which can be used for YouTube Shorts or for TikTok. And so there's all sorts of opportunities like that to make the video editing process easier, to take the content and turn it into quote cards. So Canva's got a plugin where you could take all the quotes that the speaker had. So say they had a dozen interesting things. You could take those, throw those into a spreadsheet, Google Sheets, for instance, connect that to Canva, and then Canva will automatically create, a dozen different social media posts or graphics. And so there's all sorts of opportunities from a community standpoint that are really interesting with the development of AI. And so that is it from that perspective. So we looked at how do you grow your audience, how do you grow your engagement, how do you grow your impact. Happy to answer some more questions now. And then finally, I have a resource that has much more detail in terms of some of these tools. So let me see, any other questions? Let's see, Olivia, can you elaborate how AI helps event organizers understand? Well, that's what I think I was going to get into, where I left off. Did I answer your question there, Alex? Let me know, and if there's anything else I can add. And then Olivia had another question. Are there any notable examples of AI-driven instant feedback mechanisms that could significantly improve event outcomes? Yeah, on that list of tools that I shared earlier, I would look at some of the interaction tools like the live chat, the drift, the chat, now I don't want to confuse you with chat and chatbots, but there's different tools like drift where it's chat on your website or in your event. There's more and more of those that are giving you instant feedback, as does Slido. So I would look at some of those that I mentioned in the presentation. And again, if anyone wants to dive in deeper, I'll give you a link to my AI Tools and Trends website. If you register there, and just give me your email, I will send you the list. It's of all the event tools I found. That way you can dig into them yourself. Okay, any other questions? All right, well, let me share with you this then. All right, so if you go here, aitoolsandtrends.com, there's a place to register with your email. And if you do that, then I will send you the resource guide that I kind of flipped through it really quickly, but it's all the different tools I found that are relevant to this, as well as the ones that are in those different screen captures that I did. So I'll give you the complete list. And if you want the full list of thousands, there's a whole directory there as well that you're more than happy to look through. One of my goals actually is, I think they mentioned I have a podcast, if you want to put in the chat which ones you want to learn more about, I'm actually setting up podcast interviews with the founders of each of those and having them do demos. And so if anyone has any particular tools they want me to dig into deeper, or any use cases you want me to dig in deeper, let me know. And those are the first ones I'll set up for interviews. That's it. I think that's it. I wanted to thank everyone. And if anyone does have questions, I will give you my email here as well. I'm more than happy to answer it. So if you go to Tony G at meettonyg.com, or go to Meet Tony G, which is my website, you can ask additional questions there. Just go to the contact form. I'm more than happy to help you out there. Oh, one last question. Yeah, so Zach, that was the networking opportunities. Those were the tools, and maybe you're putting that in because that's what you want more feedback on. Those are the tools. So what I'll do, if that's what everyone wants to learn more about, I will set up interviews with, these are the companies I mentioned: Speed Networking, Brella, Grip, and SwapCard. So I will make sure I interview them early on so that that content will be useful to everyone here. All right. Any other last minute questions? No? All right. Well, thank you again for attending. I hope you found value from this. Again, if you have questions, feel free to go to AI Tools and Trends or meettonyg.com, and I'm happy to answer questions there for you. So have a great day, and thanks for attending.